Start recording this session. So thank you all for being with us today. We're excited to have Mike Kohler here to present today on interviewing and onboarding in a way that will make them want to stay. So I'm sure we'll have other folks that keep joining us, but we'll go ahead and get started. After the session is over, we will send you a copy of this recording and any handouts that were referenced as well. So I do want to visit a little bit about our sponsor. So we're super excited that Plant Moran is helping us to bring these to you with no charge to you. So Plant Moran is among the nation's largest accounting, tax, consulting, and wealth management firms, and provides a full line of services to organizations in the following industries: manufacturing and distribution, financial services, healthcare, private equity, public sector, real estate, construction, and energy. Plant Moran has a staff of more than 3,300 professionals throughout the United States, with international offices in Shanghai, China, Mumbai, India, Tokyo, Japan, and Monterrey, Mexico. In Colorado, Plant Moran has served its Colorado clients for more than 40 years, with offices in Broomfield, Denver, and Fort Collins. Plant Moran has been recognized by a number of organizations, including Fortune magazine, as one of the country's best places to work. For more information, visit Plant Moran at plantmoran.com. So let me introduce you to our great speaker, Mike Kohler. Mike Kohler has been a business owner, business coach, and communication consultant, and was a communications executive for two of the largest U.S. broadband companies. More recently, he led a management and workforce development program for the Larimer County Economic Development. Mike is a full-time instructor in Purdue University's Strategic Communications Graduate Program and received Teacher of the Year honor there. He co-authored The Educated Franchisee, a guide for prospective franchise entrepreneurs. Mike earned his MBA and a bachelor's in communications from the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where he was honored with Distinguished Service Awards from the College of Public Affairs and Community Service and the Department of Communications. So Mike, I'm gonna let you take it away today. And we really do want this to be very open-ended. If you want to ask questions, if there's anything that you'd like to add while Mike's speaking, I think he'd be really open to that, right, Mike?
Hey, well, thank you so much. And I'm humbled by that wonderful introduction. Why I don't think I could have written it better, but maybe I did. I don't know. I think I can take over the screen share, so I'll give it a shot here. Yes, I do want to continue, and yes, I do want to go to this one. There we go. And I will go to slideshow mode, and I will just add this to the introduction that was very kindly presented, that my history, my professional history, has been the main source of research findings. All the aspects of this presentation would have to do with tips, tools, and techniques that I'll share, and also concepts, but not from reading some popular business book or anything like that. These are from personal experiences, either direct experience of my own or observations that I've made in working with a lot of businesses, including a lot of local businesses. And so the things I'll share with you today, I would be thrilled if, like, everything I shared with you, you just thought was brilliant and you wanted to adopt them immediately in your business. Great. But if it was just two or three concepts or tools out of this presentation that could make a little bit of a difference for you in the way that that you're currently doing your interviewing and onboarding, then I will have accomplished my mission here today. Because as we all know, today's talent marketplace, it's and the workplace in general, it's a different animal these days. Some of the old ways of doing things aren't necessarily working so effectively these days. And so what I hope to share, again, are some things that that you might look at as modifying or adding to the way you do things currently. So the objectives for today, and you can tell just from the subtitle I've got on this page that that I see these steps in the process, your employment practices, that the interviewing and onboarding are really the start of your employee retention, because these are people who you've figured out how to attract their attention. And so now this is where you try to make them stick and get them really glad that they've made such a smart business decision. So I'll suggest that our objectives are to look at how we use the interviews as relationship building, okay? Not just processing, but really getting to know people and what makes them tick. I'll share some ideas around framing interview questions so that both you and the candidates get a win out of the experience. And then in the onboarding context, prioritizing acculturation over administration. Because going back some number of years, and what I have observed in some organizations is a focus on processing people and getting the administrative piece done, when if you want to make people stick, remind them of what a smart decision they've made by really acculturating them early on. So we'll start at the start, though. I'm going to push rewind a little bit to prior to the interviewing, to accent what I consider a key aspect of your recruitment, and that is effectively telling your employer of choice story. Because as I think you're aware, in today's competitive marketplace, looking for top talent, if you are one of the employers who does any or all of these, because these are just a few bullet points of the kinds of things that employers are doing these days to make a difference, to stand out from the pack, if you will. So sometimes I see in the postings and in the recruitment process, sort of overlooking, or in journalism, they call it burying the lead of the best parts of your story. Like, okay, they already have a pretty good idea of what your company does, so you don't need to talk about the tasks, and you don't need to accent in your overview that we're committed to excellent customer service. It's more of a whiffum, what's in it for me mode these days, where they want to know, okay, how does all that translate to a good professional experience for me? So don't bury the lead. Make sure you're telling the most attractive story about yourself. Here's a tool, which, by the way, everyone will get the presentation deck and some handouts that correspond to the onboarding process. And so there will be a hyperlink. In fact, I'm going to put my cursor, but I won't click it. This tool called the Skills Engine Profile Builder gives you the opportunity to check yourself on whether you are indeed using employment practices in recruitment, interviewing, and onboarding that are skills-based, okay? And the way it works is that it's an easy one where you just click on the state you're in, namely Colorado, and the posting, the title that you're posting for, and then you can plug in your job posting and the candidate's resume to see how good of a match you are, and it cranks out an analysis for you that tells you if you're indeed your posting and their resume are focused on the skills they bring to the table. So free tool, good one to use. It's even a little bit fun, very easy to use. So, and finally, before getting to the actual interviewing, this has to do with an important part of the process, that is making sure that you're not wasting your time on interviewing people when this screening technique that my own previous employer uses effectively, and a number of other employers in the marketplace, and it's a skills-based application review with a little process that I'll share. Because if we all agree that this goal here at the bottom left, that we want to save time and make sure that we're sitting down at the table with the best qualified candidates, here's a process that some folks have used very effectively, just for your consideration. It's the equivalent, if you will, of symphonies conducting blind auditions, where they can't see the performer. They just hear the music. Here's how the process goes. An interesting thing to do is to identify a person, maybe two, who aren't going to be involved in the ultimate selection and interviewing of the candidates. A fun offshoot or byproduct of using this approach is inviting others into the sandbox to assist in the process. People feel good about that inclusive piece. So identify one person, maybe two, who won't be involved in the selection, and then arm them with the required skills that you're most interested in having people advance through the process for. So make sure that that they know what you're looking for, and then equip them with that good old-fashioned technology that still works pretty well, the Sharpie pen, to redact out all of the identifiers that don't bring any value to the process. Because why should some of these things have any relevance when they don't talk about, they don't really relate to the skills and competencies that people bring to the table. So it has worked really, really well for employers who have used this approach or a similar kind, to make sure that there aren't any implicit biases entering the process regarding any of these identifiers. Now, any questions so far? We're now going to jump into the interviewing part. Pause for a moment. Because even though my teaching with Purdue University now involves a lot of lecturing, I consider this interruptible lecture. That if I could filibuster, but I don't have to. You can interrupt at any time. Just raise a hand or just unmute and chime in. It won't offend me, I can tell you that. So let's go to the interview. Okay, how is skills-based interviewing different? Well, the first bullet point may seem like, well, duh, that yeah, it focuses on skills, not culture and personality fit. And so I'm going to warp off to a little mini rant for a moment about something that when I first started with Larimer County's Workforce Center more than 8 years ago, there was a wave, a trend that was going on about finding the proverbial right fit. I have a problem with that finding the right fit piece, and mainly having to do with, is it being used the right way? Because if it has to do with personalities or what people are like, well, what is that right fit supposed to mean? That we want to look for people who behave just like us, look just like us, act just like us, so that we have some homogenous workplace. I don't think that's what we're striving for. And so my old boss at the Workforce Center, I remember one time he said, why can't we do culture add instead of culture fit? That if people are bringing new perspectives to the table, they probably have a lot more to offer in shaping the organization's values and the way we do things. So I just have a thing about to be cautious about what we mean by the right fit, because hopefully it means what are the values, what value do they bring to the table in terms of what they know how to do. So also making sure that our questions evaluate those skills and behaviors, and that we use skill assessments in the process, which I'm a big fan of. Does it make the interviewing process speedier? No, but I'll suggest that that in terms of the time that it takes, that this is an area, this important interviewing area is where we want to invest a little more time and really get to know people before we go too far down the path. So there's a formula I want to share with you for writing skills-based questions. Now, first at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that that here's a little data point from the SHRM people, the HR Association, that that conducting structured interviews is twice as effective for selecting candidates. And you might say, well, of course we have a structured interview. We don't just go about this willy-nilly, but are we consistent in making sure that there is exactly the same interview process regarding time we devote to people, the questions we ask them, et cetera, that the structured interviews are going to get us the best results? Because I can attest from ancient history of my own in corporation life. I was responsible for large management of large teams and so forth. And I remember in my early days, I was a little too lax about how structured we were about the process. And so, of course, I remember a couple of notable times where I bungled it and made the wrong choice for wrong reasons. And so, no, be consistent throughout the process. Using behavioral and situational questions. Now, the behavioral are, of course, the questions that job seekers who get coaching are very familiar with, the talk about a time when questions that are asked in interviews. But these are legitimate and fruitful questions to ask, because the behavioral questions are the ones that ask about a person's experience in a particular competency. That is the what did you do versus the situational, which again, addressing a specific competency, focuses on a hypothetical, what would you do in a particular situation? So those are the two types that are the most effective. And focusing on a specific competency. This is why, especially if you interview in groups, do team interviews with candidates, make sure that everyone stays on the same page literally by just getting at one competency at a time, not muddling the process. And so that's why it's important to avoid questions that try to evaluate more than one, because both the interviewers and interviewees will be mixed up by that. So just stick to one topic. And on the issue of inclusive questions, we're just talking about sticking strictly to the business at hand and not directly or indirectly veering off into things like personal life and interests that could allow implicit bias to enter the interview context. So just that's the formula for the questioning. Now let's look at some tips for my favorite, well, sort of an area of expertise of mine, because my background is in strategic communications, and that is the framing of questions to get the most out of them. Now, to get win-win outcomes where we don't want to be like the professor who wants to outsmart you or give a pop quiz where you catch people being wrong. But no, everybody wants wins out of this. We want the interviewee to show their best selves and for us to get the most useful information. And so there's a little formula I want to share with you about the framing that I invite you to try out for your impending interviews that are coming up. And if there's a team of people, make sure that you practice this, that this is the way we want to frame them, if you think this framing technique makes sense for you. Starting with step one that I learned early in my corporate communications career, especially being interviewed, say, by media or in hearings or whatever, that a verbal cue at the start, no more than a sentence, a short little comment, sending a cue to the interviewee about what's coming down the pipe. Instead of jumping right to the question, the behavioral or situational question, give a verbal cue, then describe the situation, set context with the next sentence or two that you say with crystal clear clarity. Because as Brene Brown tells us, her mantra is sort of clear is kind. And so we want to be very clear. And then pause briefly, not awkwardly, not like, oh, gee, who's supposed to talk next, but just momentary pause to let them process what they've just heard about the situation set up, then finishing up with the behavioral or situational question. Okay, does that make a little bit of sense?
Mike, could you give us an example of that?
Would you like 3?
Sure, pretend I'm being interviewed. That would be fun.
I'd be nervous. Let's try out how this framing would work with a very common situation, because like in interviews, very commonly we want to get an impression about conflict resolution, how people navigate through conflict. So using that recipe I suggested, we might start with a verbal cue that sounds like this. It's unrealistic to think people never disagree in the workplace, right? So that, and just in that moment, their brain, because I remember this from my media relations day, that when I get a little tip, my brain starts going there. Oh, okay, I think I know where we're headed. Because why would you mention this if it didn't have to do with conflict? So it's unrealistic to think people never disagree, right? Tell us about a situation in which there was a conflict between 2 colleagues. It could involve you or others you observed. Brief pause. And by the way, I say the brief pause part, you wouldn't say it. That was just the amount of time it takes. So I'll say it again. It could involve you or others you observed. How did you help resolve this situation? Okay, so they got the cue of where you were headed. They got a situation spelled out. And does it let them off the hook slightly that it doesn't necessarily involve them? Maybe. But most folks have been coached about their interviewing and so forth. Many applicants do. So they're probably ready with a conflict situation. So easing to that, that behavioral, how did you help resolve this situation? It's a nice way to ease into it. Does that make a little bit of sense? Good. Now, sometimes we start with, tell us about what, okay, one of my all-time favorite disarming questions is, talk about a time when you used active listening. Like, oh, okay, that's pretty broad, like for my entire life history. Or tell us about resolving conflict. Like, no, too broad. Easing into it, I think, gives them a good chance for successfully answering the question. That's one. Let's try another. This one is more focused on a specific job requirement where you want to know what their experience has been like with a particular competency. So using that formula again, send the verbal cue that project management is really hugely important at our company. Now look, if they're in the interview room, chances are they know that it's probably like one of the main items. But this type of verbal cue that, okay, alert, this is going to test you about what do you know about this? And then the problem statement being, describe your most recent project that comes to mind in which you led or participated with multiple team members to achieve a goal. What strategies did you use to ensure that the team goals were achieved? So that one is going to be one of the, because it's probably a project management situation that will be key in their job responsibilities. So this, frankly, just doing 3 or 4 sentences helps them process it and get ready to give an effective answer. And one more that maybe will prompt a little discussion. The infamous weakness question. But before we, because I've seen that sometimes people ask it as straight out as, what's a weakness you'd like to improve? Which, interesting. Any thoughts anyone has about pro or con about asking a weakness question? Thumbs up or down? Because I like the weakness question when it's framed right. And so, look, I'm not going to pat myself on the back about this, but I'm going to share one with you that has been honed and shared with employers who have gotten back to me saying, way better way to ask this than using the word weakness and getting phony answers like, what's a weakness you'd like to improve? Oh, people say I'm a perfectionist, or I care too much, or I work too hard, Miss America pageant type answers. That is not accomplishing anything for everybody. So here's a suggestive reframing that has worked really well for some employers. So using the reframe model, sending the verbal cue first. Hey, no one's perfect, right? We all have things we like to work on. Okay, the light bulb should at least flicker at that point about what's coming down the pipe. The problem statement. At our company, we believe in investing in the personal growth and development of every employee. Now, I'm going to do more than a brief pause to say that seems to be the one that the feedback I've gotten, that this makes a statement for the company, and it says safety to that interviewee, that look, we're not looking for some phony baloney answer. We're telling you that our commitment is to your personal growth and development, which, by the way, if it isn't a commitment that your organization has, well, it's what you need to be competitive in today's marketplace, where people are expecting it as part of the employment agreement, frankly. So that part, again, what I think is cool is that it makes a real positive statement about the organization. So after that brief pause, what's a growth area for you that we can work on together? And there's safety in that. Again, it's not, oh, we might have to send you to the discard pile because you said a wrong thing. So they need to feel confident that, oh, we're going to work on this. Because unless somebody wants to unmute and say, oh no, I always hire the perfect person and they never need anything during onboarding. Like, that doesn't happen. So this question, because now we're going to get to the onboarding, really makes a statement to them that, okay, I am in the right place. Okay, on we go. Oh, and speaking of questions, here's another hyperlinked um, website that has 8 jillion interview questions. If you're ever short of questions, it's one of those plug in the job title type of tools, and it will return like almost too many possible questions, but it's a tool to use just for fun, because maybe there'll be some that, oh, I hadn't thought about that one. That might be a good one to ask. That's it on interview questions. Any questions, thoughts, protests?
I have a question. Something I've been seeing lately is people providing interview questions before the interview. I've only seen it a couple of times, heard a few people talking about it. What's your opinion on that?
Wow. Ain't never been asked that, but I like that. That is a very thought-provoking one. In my, I know how I feel about it in my teaching, because I'm pretty experienced and have some credentials in higher education teaching. And it drives me nuts when I hear about the professors who, again, want to make it a challenge to people. I want it to be clear what the, I think it's a good idea, but you know what, I'm sure there could be healthy debate about it. But I think prepping, because look, there's a question that I was going to not include at all. The question about, I've got it at the end of the presentation if there was time, about what makes you the right fit for this job. And there are mixed feelings about that question. And the problem I have with it, I think it's good, but it sort of gives advantage to the glib, okay, the BSers like me who can maybe talk a good game, but is it the real deal? Similarly, with the thing you asked, man, I'd be okay with it. And in my teaching, I make sure that they know what I'm looking for,
Sure.
what the expectations are.
Thank you.
Can I just give a little insight on my experience with that?
Oh, good.
We have started providing, I give 3 questions to all candidates prior to going into our second interview. And ask them to spend maybe 30 minutes writing up a response to these questions and bringing those with them to their second round interview. And I have found that it really speaks to maybe those candidates that are more nervous, that are more introverted, that maybe have some neurodiversity considerations, and that they have really appreciated having an opportunity to reflect on those responses without being on the spot. So it's really just 3 questions. One of them might be, describe a time when your integrity was challenged, tell me about the situation. And so just pulling things from their background. We look for people that are humble, hungry, and smart. And so I have questions for each of those areas, and it's been really effective. Then I have other questions that we talk through in the interview that are those more on the spot questions, but they have been working really well for us to provide that in advance. So for whatever that's worth.
Jess, that is an often testimony about the value. So Kyla, I hope you were tuned into
Yeah,
that.
definitely. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, because in the actual interview, the point I made about, because I also have marketing experience, where the last thing you want to do is muddle the message and go after more than one thing at a time. But the approach that Jesse described gives you a chance to see another aspect of their skill, and I think that's really cool. In fact, in one of the courses I teach, I ask for students to also do a video presentation supporting their final paper that they wrote, because different people have different kinds of strengths and skills, right? And introverts often get cheated, like, oh, they didn't have, And I think that's really unfortunate for everybody, because we're getting cheated out of good talent if we make wrong assumptions about introverts or extroverts for that matter. So thank you. Others? If not, off to
Hey,
onboarding.
Hey,
Oh,
Mike, I do have one quick question.
Sure.
So we're an engineering company and we want to make sure that our employees know CAD, AutoCAD that we're bringing in. How do you feel about, competency tests and things like that at the end of an interview?
I'm so glad you brought that up. So glad you brought that up, because unless time to hire is a data piece that matters, right? But investing the time to do those assessments, I'll use a lower level one than what you described, Michael, and that is how common it will be that job candidates think they're doing themselves a favor by overstating a little bit, like, oh, in Excel or other software, I'm intermediate, when not really. And you get all the way down to the altar to say I do, and oh, like, or you discover after the fact. So I think it's a good fail safe. There is a software developer I know in town who will give a short problem solving task, and they just want to see not necessarily the perfect answer, but how did they process it. I myself have many times when I've hired for writing positions. Well, it's one thing for a person to tell me, yep, I'm quite the writer. Okay, well, here you go. Let's take 15 to 20 minutes. Here's a sample. Let's see what you've got. So I think it's totally, not only, I think it's a fair thing to do with job candidates. It's a chance for them to show their stuff.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, off to onboarding land, where now, Michael, don't be upset with me later when I pick on a particular engineering company that I have an experience with, because that wouldn't apply to yours, I am sure.
Of course not.
Now, how is skills-based onboarding different? Well, again, the SHRM folks, who they're the ones who do the studies, not me, who say that, look, people are more likely to stick when they've been through a structured onboarding process. So here's what's different about skills-based onboarding, is that it focuses on competencies, that is, skills that people bring to the table, or that they don't, because skill gaps are important as well. That it's supportive of training opportunities that are spoken about and mentioned in the interview process, that people would expect that to be the case, and that it's inclusive of all employees. So the components of skills-based onboarding, and I say the number one differentiator about skills-based onboarding is in comparison to the old and in my opinion, flawed processing of people. Like onboarding is an administrative thing, when it's, well, not anymore. So the components include training or skill development, because in the interview you talked about it. What can we work on? Or if again, unless you have found that perfect person who is off the charts, 10 out of 10 on everything, that there's an investment we need to make into our new hires, because they have convinced us with enough of what they bring to the table that there are things we can work on with them once we've brought them on board. Coaching and mentorship, I gotta tell you that A robust onboarding program isn't the fastest. Sorry, not a time saver. Furthermore, there are other actual tangible costs. For example, in the coaching and mentorship, well, you have your choice. You have your choice. That what do you want to be like? I don't want to pick on retailers when I say this, but sometimes it's, do we have a pulse? There's the cash register. Go get them. That we want to make sure that people are brought up to snuff with a quality experience. And who's going to provide that experience? Some really quality people who are already on board that will have to be taken out of production. Okay, so you're taking them out of the mix and spending time to bring people up to a good level. So it's an investment, you know, and it's one worth, for the long term, worth making. Also, what are the relationships that are going to be needed? The acculturation piece is going to be more than, oh, there's a manual, learn this on your own and you'll be just fine. Relationships are going to be important. And then I don't mean to be dismissive of administration in the overall picture, because we have to be serious about, okay, what resources are going to be needed to bring the new hires up to at least acceptable, if not peak, productivity level. Now, here's something I sort of authored based on personal experience that I've had and a model that I saw out of a birthed energy company, a green energy company that really was super smart about how to sequence our onboarding orientation piece of the puzzle. So it starts with tell a compelling story. Now, Michael, forgive me, but this is where that engineering company comes to mind, and it was a really large engineering company, a global engineering company, who thought that, yep, that orientation piece with people was sit down and listen to a bunch of administrative stuff that, you know, it would have to be revisited later anyway, because how are you supposed to digest all this? And apparently this company, although I am certain that not all engineers look at things this way, that everything can be done out of a manual, but no, starting with your compelling stories. And that is the things about your organization that people really care about the most. If you bombard them with administrative details first or things like that, not only lose their attention, but they're not going to be able to process it all, and they're not going to be inspired to. But when the story of the company is told, including heritage of the company, the values that people have, these important, seemingly intangible things are going to show up later in the productivity. That when people hear right from the start that, wow, this is what I'm part of. And by the way, when I refer to the cultural norms, I'm not talking about making some up. Got to be authentic. Okay, don't say, oh, we're a family, we're like a family here, if it's more like the Manson family or something. Like, no, be real about what the cultural norms are, so that people have a realistic expectation. If it's an organization where people are more in dress up mode, then that needs to be clear up front. But anyway, the personality, if you will, the culture of the organization should come first. And please make sure that it's a compelling storyteller. Because this particular instance that I was referring to earlier, that just happened to be an engineering company, had a person conducting the session that frankly couldn't care less whether they were there or not. At a fantastic gold standard type company I was with a number of years ago, one of our compelling stories was one of the construction crew chiefs who just he told our story better than anybody. So it doesn't have to be a person dragged into it feeling like they wish they could be somewhere else. Nope, get a compelling storyteller to talk about the organization and what people are signing up for. So starting with the good story about the company, then with that cementing their interest, if you will, I do not want to downplay the significance of protecting the organization, because all that required paperwork, the essential docs, a bunch of which I'm going to share some checklists with you that Sherm recommends, and they're very basic checklists. But if you don't have have one in hand, they'll be worth looking at, because if you don't, this is where crossing the T's and dotting the I's is crucial, because this is the time where you need to make sure that in terms of risk mitigation and liability and so forth, that you are covered. Because if you have not ever been a party to an EEOC hearing, I can tell you that first of all, you don't want to be. You don't want that to be part of your life. And then if you do, and the administrative law judge asks, did you have your ducks in order? If the answer is no, next case, because the complainant is going to win that one. So having your ducks in order, really good idea. And I'll share some materials with you later. So that's the sequence I recommend, but we're not finished yet. Finish up with the acculturation piece about that promise you made, that, hey, the what's in it for me factor for those new hires is important. And so reinforcing the org culture, but then restating the commitment to their personal growth, that, hey, we want you on board for the long haul, and we're going to invest the time in your growth that will make it a great experience for you. Yep, tie it up with a bow. So in the sandwich, if you will, start and finish with the good organizational story, but do protect the organization. Sensible sequence also takes time. There'll be a sample from that birthed company that I told you about, and we can't all do this, but like whether it's a single new hire or a group of new hires, they devote an entire day of meeting the leaders of the organization, exploring the different areas of the organization. So it's not just a paper shuffle. So now, at that point, you cannot sit down soon enough, in my humble opinion, with a career mapping discussion with your new hires, because, and this model on the screen indeed shows the old model, which used to be sufficient, but isn't anymore. Still relevant, okay, but not to as many people as it used to be, because the old model was about rising up the ladder, and people used to think that they were supposed to, when they were asked the question about where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, they thought they were supposed to say things like, I want your job, or I want to rise up the ladder and be the boss. That is not the big thing these days. I'm going to go back to it. Do spend time with them, talking about what aspirations they may have. But people are more, these are symbolic of what the career mapping discussions and thinking are about today. That personal growth and development is the highest priority for new hires. In fact, when people are looking for jobs, that's why I said the thing about tell your employer of choice story. That these days people want to know what's in it for me, that I want to grow as a person and as a professional. And so the more organic approach is the kind of growth that they're expecting. It's an expectation now, not just a, oh, that would be nice. Because the fine folks at McKinsey, some of you may be quite familiar with them, the McKinsey Global Institute, which does exhaustive and exhausting research. They published the future of work in America, and there will be a hyperlink to the study itself. I recommend maybe just digesting I think the executive summary was like 28 pages or something like that. But this key finding that I'm hovering around with the mouse about employers now being the natural providers of lifelong learning, it's more of an expectation. So that doesn't mean there's not importance of benefits like education benefits that might be offered, but learning in the workplace and again, a more holistic approach of, I want to know more about other aspects of the business and maybe be interested in horizontal growth in the organization, not necessarily up the ladder. So providing people with personal growth opportunities is a big darn deal. And I always include this little exchange between the CEO, who kind of freaks out about, man, the costs of investing in the development of people, that the alternative is, yeah, well, don't develop them, and what value does that add to the organization? You get a bunch of quit and stay folks if we're not investing in their growth. That, folks, is, I think, here's other workshops that I've been the Northern Colorado trailblazer trainee, if you will, on teaching the Skillful Talent series, and also a series of communication strategies workshops. So that's enough about me, and I will now stop the share and left just a couple minutes for anybody who wants to share a nugget of wisdom that I can scribble down. Because if not, you all get to escape for lunch. Well, thank you, Kyla. And Jesse, thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the information.
Ms. Myers, please tell them about the great stuff coming up.
You're muted.
Sorry, I'm talking away and I don't even, thank you, Brent, telling me to unmute. Lots to manage here. So thank you for joining us today. We will be sending you out later a recording of this event, as well as the PowerPoint slides and all the handouts that Mike referenced as well. I think he has 4 handouts for you, so it's great and amazing. So they'll always be stored on our website under the talent series at the Fort Collins Chamber. So you can always reference that information as well. So next week on March 7th, we do have wonderful elementary schools principal, Melissa Paduska, who's put in problem-based learning, and she's taking elementary school kids and teaching them problem-based learning. When I worked at Columbine Health Systems, we partnered with actual kindergartners that did problem-based learning about how to get more people to volunteer with older adults in nursing homes. And they came up with some really amazing ideas. And it's a new way of teaching kids to be great employees for the rest of us, right? And so I think it's a great way for business to help students to be thinking in a business way moving forward. So I hope that's something that you want to join us as well. We'll take a break for the rest of March, and then we'll have some more in April and early May. So appreciate you being here today and joining us. Also wanted to, oh, it doesn't go to my next slide. We also have the Talent Summit, which is happening on March 30th from 7:30 to noon. And we have some amazing speakers. We have a wonderful economist that we're bringing in from Los Angeles, who's got great information about workforce, as well as other economic factors affecting all of us in our work as well. We're going to have veterans and folks with developmental disabilities and older adults actually speaking to us about working in the world of work and how they view that work and how we can hire those populations. I have Catherine Keegan coming from the Colorado Office of the Future of Work to talk about how Colorado will soon, July 1st, be able to register apprenticeships for folks. And that's a really big deal. You don't have to work with the federal government. So she's going to speak. And then also, the chamber received a work-based learning incentive program grant. We were just notified February 10th, and we're still waiting for more information and signing the contract. The key to this is that we will, in 14 months, need to distribute $400,000 to employers for work-based learning. So if you do a shadow experience, for example, with a high school student, a college student, a career changer, an adult, and you get it to 8 hours, we can pay you $1,500 for that experience. It's learning about work. Learning through work is maybe internships, and you can get paid for those internships. And then learning at work is you've actually hired someone. So we will have more information coming out maybe before that, but for sure at the March 30th Talent Summit as well, of funds that we need to get to you. We need to share them with you, but also how you can get those monies to do this work-based learning effort. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
See you next week.
Thank you.